Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well on this Tuesday. It's a transfer news special. We're going to be looking at the potential big deals that could unravel or materialize between now and transfer deadline day, and going to be covering it all on the show. We're going to be talking about Jhon Duran back on the table, Joao Felix and Axel Disasi to Aston Villa, and also what has been going on with Mathys Tel, along with the continued backlash and condemnation of Chelsea's transfer policy. If you like the sound of that, smash the like button, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Also, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for tuning in. Please do give us a positive rate and review. It helps the show out massively. So let's jump into it with David Ornstein, probably one of the most reliable transfer reporters out there, talking about Jhon Duran and the potential that Jhon Duran, a player who Chelsea were linked with heavily in the summer, it looked like it could be a feasible deal, didn't materialise. He remained at Aston Villa, even as Ollie Watkins' backup has remained there. It appeared he was going to remain there for the majority of this season. And in recent days, or at least in recent weeks, again, as the transfer window has remained open, there is speculation about his future wanting more than just a kind of understudy role to Ollie Watkins, which is understandable. As we have done before on my channel, look at the stats of Jhon Duran, which are already very impressive. With Donnell Marlon also joining this month, Unai Emery favours a lone front man, and both Watkins and Duran want the starting berth to be their own. Ornstein also says there is a growing sense that sooner or later something will have to give. Now, West Ham have already submitted a bid around 57 million this month. That was rejected, but a firm decision is yet to be made on Duran, and apparently bids of around 80 million could be enough to sway Villa to potentially sell Jhon Duran. Now, there is more to this in terms of Chelsea. Joao Felix is a player that apparently could be making a move to Villa Park in kind of a sweetener for the deal. And also, of course, Axel Disasi has been linked heavily in recent days, with personal terms apparently not being an issue. This is what Matt Law had to say as well. Lots of moving pieces around Chelsea, mostly in terms of outgoing in the final week of this window. Villa like Disasi and Felix, but will probably need to sell someone to move for Felix. For incomings, Chelsea still looking at attackers, wing or nine for now or the summer. And just to confirm this again, Simon Phillips, he has a source that has confirmed the Jhon Duran name being brought up, I think expectedly, with Chelsea. So there's three players here: Jhon Duran, Aston Villa to Chelsea, Axel Disasi and Joao Felix. Let's take one at a time. Jhon Duran, I'm just going to lay it out right here. I mean, this is kind of a difference of opinion. I've sort of evolved the opinion for several reasons around like transfer fees, because transfer fees are just insane, and valuation and good value in the market kind of feels ridiculous. Even when I bring up what I would deem in a logical sense great value, if the rest of the market kind of isn't following suit, it doesn't really matter, does it? So if Chelsea paid 80 million now for Jhon Duran, I know a lot of people would be like sticker shock and all of that, but I have to say, given my liking for the player, what Chelsea desperately need to actually upgrade the first team squad, I would deem that a good signing, because it's what the club it's what the team needs to make us an objectively better football team in the Premier League, which should be the end point. And also, can't have too much growing about Chelsea with transfer fees, not only because we've spent large amounts, but you look at the amount we spent if you total it up with certain areas that could have just got us one good player. You know, we've spent a lot on this squad. The sporting directors have spent tons on this squad to get us to a position where we may need to spend 80 million in the January transfer window to try and rectify a big area. So that in itself is kind of my mind on kind of like, oh, is the fee too much? I'm kind of not really down. The question I'm asking is Jhon Duran a good enough player for Chelsea? And I think all the evidence cites yes. It's not the finished article by any means, but I think in terms of a physical presence, actually a little bit different to Nicholas Jackson, where you actually could still play both players on the pitch at the same time. Jackson a little bit wider. Chelsea have had a real problem in recent weeks of looking at wide players to swinging a load of crosses, but no one there to kind of be the physical presence. And Jackson, of course, his form deteriorating. It's been clear that Chelsea need something more up top, and the justification in terms of Chelsea's model, whatever it is, how serious it actually is, I'm not entirely sure in terms of actual football logic, but this is a young player. This is someone they've scouted before. This is someone they've looked at before. Every time I watch Jhon Duran, I'm impressed. I think that he's just, even last season, this is before Sebsi on Twitter, which I know some people don't like, but he was an early fan of Duran, and I was looking at his numbers and I wasn't that impressed. And then I watched some of his performances, and I just think he does have tendencies that remind me of someone I really do like in Chelsea history, but I just think he is a disruptor. I think he is a bit of a maverick. I think he's someone who's just a bit of a nuisance. And I think from a character point of view, I really like that about him. But it's not just aesthetics, it's the output as well. We've looked at this before. When you factor in this as a guy who isn't the main starter at Aston Villa, that's what makes it equally impressive and what Chelsea could be gaining. Now, of course, this links to who could be going in the opposite direction. Now, I've already seen people flagging up that actually us losing Axel Disasi to a potential Champions League qualifying rival could be a bad thing in terms of squad depth, and Joao Felix too. The trade-off there for me is not comparable. I think Chelsea are getting the better deal. Even if we lose two players, I still think we're getting the better deal. We're getting rid, hopefully and permanently, of a defender who hasn't been good enough for Chelsea, whose minutes probably should be going to Trevor Chalobah, should be going to Josh Achimpong, which I think would be far more valuable and effective for Chelsea in the first place. So there's that. And you're bringing in someone who I think objectively very quickly at least make your depth options in striker a lot more stronger from the off. I think Jhon Duran has a pretty strong case at the moment. Unfortunately for Jackson, he'd come in and I think he'd very quickly maybe become the first choice option. As I said, Jackson I think has enough in his game to respond to that competition, and maybe even find himself playing a little bit more out wide where he could still be very effective for Chelsea. So there's that. Disasi we've been through a number of times. It's hilarious to me that it has to be a permanent move. A loan is just ridiculous. I'm not entirely sure for Villa it makes a lot of sense to sign Axel Disasi, but maybe it's what Emery wants. They play a real high line, which I don't think suits him, but whatever. Like, if we can get him off the books, great. Joao Felix, I mean, we're a bit like into the Dewsbury Hall category. I'm not saying in terms of minutes. Joao Felix has played substantially more minutes than Dewsbury Hall, but I felt this signing was pointless in the summer, and it's ironic if Felix was to leave for Aston Villa before next week, it would almost mirror his first stint at Chelsea, which was a 6-month loan, probably actually less than that in terms of actual game time because he got that suspension. Where, okay, I think in terms of numbers, this one's been a lot better, but you have to factor in that nearly all of his goals and nearly all of his contributions have come against either League 2 opposition or really poor UEFA Conference League minnows. And I'm not saying that those goals had no effect for Chelsea and there weren't some nice moments in there for him, but it's not exactly like a situation where I'm sitting there going, wow, like Felix has really changed my mind as a player. Like, no, I think it says a lot that they'd be willing to part with him very quickly, and I'd be easily happy to depart with him. I think the shame of it is that if that is the case, and if that is the thing that leads to where we want to be, where Jhon Duran comes in, or Chelsea buy an attacker, it may not even be Jhon Duran, but we get a striker. It pains me that we had to sacrifice our best midfielder of last season for basically a 5-month PSR or an Atletico Madrid sweetener to then sell to another Premier League team. I've tweeted this, I'll say this on camera, I'll say this on my podcast, I'll consistently say this. That's not football. That's not any logical kind of business of actually looking to improve your squad. I don't know what it is, but it looks stupid. I'm happy that we'd be dispensing with players that I don't think in the long term are actually great for Chelsea. However, again, questions are being asked, and I think rightly so at the current point. I saw Alex Goldberg very passionately talking about this on his playback stream, and I think, as I've said in my morning blues, I've consistently said it, I think it's quite notable the level of contempt now, even when some players like Duran, personally, I mean, maybe you disagree, let me know in the comments whether you think Duran would be good enough. And again, the fee is the headline thing, but I just would ask you, like, we've talked about the money Chelsea spend anyway, and how we've actually spent smaller amounts, but probably for worse players. Does that really matter? Is he actually an improvement on what we actually need right now, which everyone's been crying out for a striker, if that deal could be a possibility before now and the end of the window? And I think as well, you've got to understand that there's going to be an extra premium because it's midway through the season, and Villa would be sacrificing a lot of goals, even if for Emery, his system needs a number 10. I mean, I think that Joao Felix, it would take a lot for Joao Felix to, I think, compensate for that loss, really. Because Joao Felix, just looking at his career, and I say he may turn out to be wonderful for Aston Villa, but you're not looking at someone who's a ruthless finisher or someone who's going to provide you a lot of goals. Those goals are going to have to be replaced somewhere, and that's probably why Chelsea would have to pay a little bit more of a premium, even if two players are going in the opposite direction. Of course, we have other names, so if the Duran stuff doesn't come out. Liam Delap, though, at the moment, as we sit here right now, it seems like one that would be done in the summer, which is not great, which is, I don't think, where Chelsea need to be. They need to do something right now. Mathys Tel apparently has rejected Chelsea, which is a bit embarrassing because this is not a player at the peak of their powers. This is not Kylian Mbappe. This is not one of the big superstars in world football. This is someone who has barely done anything in the European game, and that's not me rubbishing Tel. He clearly is playing at a high level. He's got through to Bayern. He's someone that I know a lot of people rate very highly, like Alex Goldberg and others who would like to see us sign him. But I think when you are promoting yourself to the media as a club that is all about buying these very exciting, talented youngsters, and even some of them, it's even reported that maybe Duran isn't now open to joining Chelsea anyway. When even those players are turning around now and starting to say to you, I'm not really sure this is the place for me, alarm bell should be ringing. But I don't think Mathys Tel for me is a great loss. Like, if we don't sign him, we don't sign Garnacho, but we sign a centre forward. If anyone's complaining at that, I don't know where their head's at, to be honest. It's so bleedingly obvious that what Chelsea currently need is a couple of things. I'm going to do a separate show where I talk about 3 things in particular that Chelsea need to do before transfer deadline day that you can go and check out. Because there's one other area we haven't spoken about, right? And we'll sort of delve into some of these things because it's a very key time of the season. It really is for Chelsea. I think this is a defining window of time, not just in terms of the transfer window itself and having to get deals over the line, but I also think for the rest of the season. I think the impact of Chelsea not acting in a smart way, not in what Winstanley and Stewart think of as a smart way, but in terms of a footballing sense of a smart way. If they don't do it and Chelsea get more injuries, our form continues to derail, we don't get Champions League football, the consequences in the short and long term could be catastrophic, really. So I think that, you cannot underestimate how serious this moment is, because Chelsea have put themselves in an environment where they have so many errors, they have so many holes in the squad that need rectifying. Unfortunately, some of those cannot be addressed between now and the end of the window. I think a couple can, at least from what we understand. So I think it's within their power. They've got to act quickly. Even if that is only one permanent new player coming in, there's still obviously other things they could do between now and deadline day. So I want to hear your thoughts on what they could be in the comments below. But that is it for today's show. Let me know yours and your thoughts on everything we discussed in the comments below. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.